this man was, by force of arms or force of circumstance, to face and feel and carry someone's cross in love's full glare and not his backward glance. So, Simon, no disciple, still fulfilled the calling, take the cross and follow me. By accident, his life was stalled and stilled, becoming all he was compelled to be. Make me, like him, your pressed man and your priest, your altar Christus, burdened and released. And verse 6 is Veronica wipes the face of Jesus. Bystanders and bypassers turn away and wipe his image from their memory. She keeps her station. She is here to stay and stem the flow. She is the reliquary of his last look on her. The bloody sweat and salt tears of his love are soaking through the folds of her devotion and the wet folds of her handkerchief, like the dew of morning, like a softening rain of grace, because she wiped the grime from off his skin and glimpsed the Godhead in his human face, whose hidden image we all bear within. Through all our veils and shrouds of daily pain, the face of God is shining once again. So 7, Jesus falls for the second time. Through all our veils and shrouds of daily pain, through our bruised bruises and reopened scars, he falls and stumbles with us, hurt again when we are hurt again. With us, he bears the cruel repetitions of our cruelty, the beatings of already beaten men, the second rounds of torture, the futility of all unheeded pleading, every scream in vain. And by this fall, he finds the fallen souls who passed a first but failed a second trial, the souls who thought their faith would hold them whole and found it only held them for a while. Be with us when the road is twice as long as we can bear. By weakness, make us strong. And 8, as Jesus meets the women of Jerusalem, he falls and stumbles with us, hurt again, but still he holds the road and looks in love on all of us who look on him, our pain as close to him as his. These women move compassion in him as he does in them. He asks us both to weep and not to weep. Women of Gaza and Jerusalem, women of every nation, where the deep wounds of memory divide the land and lives of all your children, where the mines of all our wars are sown, Afghanistan, Iraq, the Côte d'Ivoire. He reads the signs and weeps with you, and with you he will stay until the day he wipes your tears away. And 9, Jesus falls for the third time. He weeps with you, and with you he will stay when all your staying power has run out. You can't go on. You go on anyway. He stumbles just beside you when the doubt that always haunts you cuts you down at last and takes away the hope that drove you on. This is the third fall, and it hurts the worst. This long descent through darkness to depression, from which there seems no rising and no will to rise or breathe or bear your own heartbeat. Twice you survive. This third will surely kill. And you could almost wish for that defeat, except that in the cold hell where you freeze, you find your God beside you on his knees. 10. Jesus is stripped of his garments. You can't go on. You go on anyway. He goes with you, his cradle to your grave. Now is the time to loosen. Cast cast away the useless weight of everything but love. For he began his letting go before the worlds for which he dies were made, emptied himself, became one of the poor to make you rich in him and unafraid. See, as they strip the robe from off his back, they strip away your own defences too. Now, you could lose it all and never lack. Now you can see what naked love can do. Let go these bonds beneath whose weight you bow. His stripping strips you both for action now. 11. The crucifixion. Jesus is nailed to the cross. See, as they strip the robe from off his back and spread his arms and nail them to the cross, the dark nails pierce him and the sky turns black, and love is firmly fastened onto loss. But here, a pure change happens. On this tree, loss becomes gain. Death opens into birth. Here, wounding heals, and fastening makes free. Earth breathes in heaven. Heaven roots in earth. And here we see the length, the breadth, the height, where love and hatred meet, and love stays true. Where sin meets grace and darkness turns to light, we see what love can bear and be and do. And here our Saviour calls us to his side. His love is free. His arms are open wide. And number 12, Jesus dies on the cross. The dark nails pierce him and the sky turns black. We watch him as he labours to draw breath. He takes our breath away to give it back, return it to its birth through his slow death. We hear him struggle, breathing through the pain, who once breathed out his spirit on the deep, who formed us when he mixed the dust with rain and drew us into consciousness from sleep. His spirit and his life he breathes in all, mantles his world in his one atmosphere, and now he comes to breathe beneath the pall of our pollutions, draw our injured air to cleanse it and renew. His final breath breathes and bears us through the gates of death. 13. Jesus' body is taken down from the cross. His spirit and his life he breathes in all. Now, on this cross, his body breathes no more. Here, at the centre, everything is still, spent, and empty, opened to the core. A quiet taking down, a prizing loose, a crossbeam lowered like a weighing scale, unmaking of each thing that had its use, a long withdrawing of each bloodied nail. This is ground zero, emptiness and space, with nothing left to say, or think, or do, but look unflinching on the sacred face that cannot move or change or look at you. Yet, in that prizing loose and letting be, he has unfastened you and set you free. So 14, Jesus is laid in the tomb. Here at the centre, everything is still, before the stir and movement of our grief that bears its pain with rhythm, ritual, beautiful, useless gestures of relief. So they anoint the skin that cannot feel, and soothe his ruined flesh with tender care, kissing the wounds they know they cannot heal, with incense scenting only empty air. He blesses every love that weeps and grieves, and makes our grief the pangs of a new birth. The love that's poured in silence at old graves, renewing flowers, tending the bare earth, is never lost. In him, all love is found, and sown with him a seed in the rich ground. And then I thought that was the end of them. And then I was asked to write the final one for Easter Dawn. So this one I'll read particularly for Mary Dory, who asked me to write it. 15. Easter Dawn. He blesses every love that weeps and grieves. And now he blesses hers who stood and wept and would not be consoled or leave her love's last touching place, but watched as low light crept up from the east. A sound behind her stirs a scatter of bright birdsong through the air. She turns, but cannot focus through her tears or recognise the gardener standing there. She hardly hears his gentle question, "Why? Why are you weeping?" Or sees the play of light that brightens as she chokes out her reply, "They took my love away, my day is night." And then she hears her name. She hears love say the word that turns her night and ours today. Sorry, that's a bit heavy. Anyway, what some people have done is taken those and used them sort of in Lent and arranged stations of the cross. I've had letters from both those who do that customarily in Catholic churches or churches. But what's very interesting, particularly in America, I've had letters from various people who didn't know about the stations and then kind of Googled them, downloaded a few off the internet, and then actually kind of discovered, funnily enough through the poem, this way of making the journey. The thing that got to me particularly was that really quite shortly after I put them up on the internet, the amazing internet, I had an email from someone to say that they'd heard them being read aloud on the Via Dolorosa in Jerusalem. So, that felt like I was right to have written. Still here. I'm going to turn away from these now and try and give you a bit more of a flavour of what's happening in the other book, as I say, which is there I'm following Darwin and, of course, George Herbert. My poem about the last breath of Jesus was very much on George Herbert's God's breath in man returning to his birth. Just go unpacking Herbert, really. But in these poems, because they're meant as much, not only for private reading, but for use in church, and they're meant to be accessible and the kind of public utterances and celebrations of the faith, if you like, the faith is more explicit. What I wanted to do in the singing bowl was to really follow that advice from the Muse about remain within the world which you're made, get into what is the earth and the air, rest in God's good creation, see what he's doing there. Don't feel you have to, as it were, rush to a biblical text at every moment or whatever. And so I'm just going to read you a few of those that sort of do that. I think I'll read you, I'm just beginning to start to be able to walk again after breaking my ankle, and it's been a long journey since the end of January when I broke it, and walking is one of my great pleasures. So I'm going to read you a poem which I wrote last spring when I could walk really well, walking out in Grantchester. It was a very wild, wet spring, as you may remember. There was sort of all four seasons in one day. This poem's called Out in the Elements, and it's written in Spencerian stanzas, stanza form, obviously invented by Edmund Spenser, used by quite a lot of the Romantic poets as well, which I particularly like. And you may have noticed that through a lot of my poetry I play with, in fact it's there on the cover of the book, I play with the old elements of earth, air, water and fire in different ways, and I do so fairly explicitly in this poem. It's out in the elements. I really was out in the elements on this particular walk. It also has a reference, which will doubtless, in a really politically correct society, would be proved out. It has a reference to my smoking habit. And I smoke pipes. I really like smoking pipes, so it has my pipe in it. Anyway, here we go. Maybe if you like walking, you'll recognise some of the pleasures of this. Out in the Evans, Grantchester. I crunch the gravel on my ravelled walks and clatter at my boots in the wet clay. For I myself am clay that breathes and talks, articulated earth. I move and pray, alive at once to walk and be the way. The root beneath, the branch above the tree, these hedges bright with blossom, white with May, everything concentrates, awaits in me the coming of the one who sets creation free. Earth opens now to sudden drumming rains, the raised and falling waters of the sea, whose tidal pull and play is in my veins, spilling and spreading, filling, flowing free, whose ebb and flow is still at work in me, and in the wombing pulse of play and work, when heartbeats pushed in waves of empathy till waters broke and bore me from the dark and found this foundered shore and took me from the ark. As rain recedes, I pause to fill my pipe and kindle fire that flickers into light and lights the leaf all curled and cured and ripe within a burr-starred bowl. How fierce and bright it glows against the cold, and I delight in taste and fragrance, watching wisps of grey and graceful smoke in their brief flight. As sun breaks from the clouds and lights my way, I feel the fire that makes the light that makes the day. Now air is all astir in breaks and blasts. The last grey rags of cloud are blown aside. The hedgerows hush and rustle in the gusts as clean winds whistle round me. Far and wide bent grasses and frail flowers lean aside. I breathe the world in with the brimming breeze that tugs at me and eddies at my side, quickens and flickers through the tangled trees and breathes me back to life and brings me to my knees. Akin to every creature, I will learn from each and all the meaning of my birth. I love the dust to which I will return, the subtle substance of my mother earth. From water born, by fire fathered forth, an index and epitome of nature, I sum and summon all the world is worth, and breathing now his elemental air, I find the one, without, within, and everywhere. So that was a sort of, how are we doing for time? Are we all right?
Yes, we're fine.
We're fine. Okay. Let me, although the new collection's in sort of several sections. It's got local habitations, which is about particular places, and there's there are various ones. There's one, I'll read you this one now, which is an absolutely favourite place up in Northumberland, in Amble. Well, actually, the harbour, Warmouth Harbour in Amble. It's just, I don't know if you know that part of the world. It's a little bit south of where you get up to Holy Island, but it's near Warmouth Castle. And anyway, it has a little fishing fleet, still clinging on in spite of all the vicissitudes of just local boats that go out. And I love the names of these boats. They're all kind of biblical phrases. They're called things like fruitful bow. You know, I mean, you remember the psalm, it's about to be like a fruitful bough. But it's wonderful to actually have written on the bow of a boat the word fruitful bough. You know, Sacred Heart, Aspire. Anyway, one morning early I went down to the harbour there, and these boats had all come in from the night's fishing. And I just walked along and read the names. And it seemed to me just the names themselves were like a poem, a sort of found poem. So I wrote all these names down, and I kept them. I felt like a sort of jeweller who'd been given a little set of pearls or jewels, and I was just waiting to string them together, waiting to find the right setting. And I remember my dad used to say that the best bits in Homer were just the names of the ships, that we had long, lovely lists. So that all of that came out as this. I'm glad to say this poem was actually, it's called Saying the Names. It was actually published in The Ambler, which is the little local paper for Amble. And I got in the end to talk to some of the fishermen who'd seen it in the Ambler and were very pleased that their boats made the cut. You know? So here we go. Saying the names. Dawn over Amble, and along the coast Light on the tide flows to Northumberland. Silvers the scales of herring, freshly caught and gleaming in their boxes on the dock. Shivers the rainbow sheen on drops of diesel, and lights at last the North Sea fishing fleet. Tucked into harbour here, their buoyant lines lift the light on plated prows, their names, the ancient names, picked out in this year's paint. Providence, Bold Venture, Star Divine are first along the quayside. Fruitful bough has stemmed the tides to bring her harvest in. Orcadian mist and Sacred Heart aspire. Their names are numerous, a found poem. Those Bible-burnished phrases live and lift into the brightening tide of morning light and beg to be recited, chanted out. For names are incantations, mysteries made manifest like ships on the horizon. Eastward, their long line tapers towards dawn and ends at last with freedom, radiant morn. So there are quite a few places. There's another section in this which is called Word and World, and it's about poetry itself, about the relationship between word and world. Again, I'm borrowing from T.S. Eliot, as you do, against the silent word, the still world, still world around the centre of the silent word. Do you remember that? So it's a series of poems about the relationship of word and world. Let me just read a couple of them. This one's called Spell, and it's playing with that wonderful connection between spell in the sense of spelling and spell in the sense of casting a spell, like chant and enchantment, and canticum and song and spell and spiel. There's a deep sense, of course the word is, all things are made in the word, but there's a wonderful sense about the magical power of language to summon and create. So it seemed to me that any of us that write, all we do, as I put in this poem, is summon the summoners, you know. It's actually language itself which does the creative work. We just sort of summon a few of them up and ask them to get to work. You know? Yeah. So this is called Spell. Summon the summoners, the 26 enchanters, spelling silence into sound. They bind and loose, they find and are not found. Recall the river tongues from Alf to Styx. Summon the summoners, the shaping shapes, the grounds of sound, the generative grammar, signs of the mystery, inscribed arcana, runes from the root tree written in the deeps, leaves from the tail tree lifted, swift and free, shining, recombining in their dance the genesis of every utterance, pattering the pattern of the tree. Summon the summoners and let them sing. The summoners will summon everything. So that's a little kind of ode to. But we, I'll do another one about this business of summoning. Summon the summoners makes it sound like it's really easy, you know. You just summon the summoners. so I don't want to give the impression that it's all. So I'm going to read you another poem. This is called Salvage, and it's a villanelle. Salvage. Perhaps this poem's just another write-off, another scrap of paper for the bin. So, should I struggle on, or turn the light off? My muse, maybe, has booked another night off. Without her help, I can't even begin. Perhaps this poem's just another write-off. And yet, I can't forget what I caught sight of. A grace I mustn't lose, but cannot win. So, should I struggle on, or turn the light off? I'm darkened by the love I make most light of. I cast aside what's not yet counted in. Could I presume to recognise a write-off? It is despair itself that I must fight off, when giving up feels just like giving in. So, should I struggle on, or turn the light off? There's something here to salvage, something right off life's radar, or else underneath her skin. Since I'm redeemed, and I was once a write-off, I'll struggle on until they turn the light off. Okay, that's all celebrating the very positive things that we can do with language. The problem is, of course, as we all know, this extraordinary power, the grounds of sound, the generative grammar, can be used dreadfully and terribly. And I wanted to touch on that. So this is a poem, which again is kind of slightly delighting in the sound of things, but making another point. This poem is called What If? I wrote it partly in response to, around the time of the last American election, you know, the language that was being, and the language targeting that was being used, you know, there's something dreadful going on. So I preface this with a quotation which is almost never quoted, a passage of Jesus which I have never, ever, in all the years I've been in churches, I've never heard anybody preach on this passage. It's never quoted. It seems to be one of the most apt sayings of Jesus, particularly for our easily communicating internet age. So the poem is called What If? And its epigram is this. But I say unto you, that every idle word that men shall speak, they shall give account thereof in the day of judgment. For by thy words shalt thou be justified, and by thy words shalt thou be condemned. Matthew 12, 36 and 37. What if every word we say never ends or fades away, gathers volume, gathers way, drums and dins us with dismay, surges on some dreadful day when we cannot get away, whelms us till we drown? What if not a word is lost? What if every word we cast, cruel, cunning, cold, accursed, every word we cut and paste echoes to us from the past, fares and finds us first and last, haunts and hunts us down? What if every murmuration, every otiose oration, every blogger's aberration, every tweeted titivation, every oath and imprecation, insidious insinuation, every verbal aberration, unexamined asseveration, idiotic iteration, every facile explanation drags us to the ground? What if each polite evasion, every word of defamation, insults made by implication, querulous prevarication, compromising convocation, propaganda for the nation, false or flattering persuasion, blackmail and manipulation, simulated desperation, grows to such reverberation that it shakes our own foundation, shakes and brings us down? Better that some words be lost. Better that they should not last, tongues of fire and violence. Word, through whom the world is blessed. Word, in whom all words are graced. Do not bring us to the test. Give our clamant voices rest, and the rest is silence.
Maybe at that point we all...
Yeah, let's say that, yeah, you're right there. I'll definitely talk myself out of that one. Yeah.
We normally have a break.
Have a break, yeah, that's good.
There's incredibly powerful stuff going on. So look, shall we have a brief break now for refreshments? Then we can have a chance to come back.
Come back, we do, yeah. Thank you so much.